Hey everybody, before we get into this recap, if you're looking for a recap of Season 1 of Outer Banks, there should be a little tab up at the top. Just click that. Now, after Sarah and John B. were lost at sea, the entire Outer Banks started mourning. The Pogues are obviously mourning the loss of their friend, John B., but the community's also mourning the loss of the sheriff. And at her funeral, in attendance, is Ward Cameron. So is the FBI and Shoop, who is acting as the interim sheriff, but they're all kind of looking at Ward a little cross-eyed. They eventually do bring Ward in for questioning, and he just says, I don't care what the kid said. He killed Peterkin. When Shoop asks, okay, but where did the plane go? Ward's lawyer shuts that down pretty quickly. So it looks like Ward's could escape by, but the Pogues don't forget. Keisha and Pope actually go over to Ward's house, and Keisha spray paints murderer on the wall outside. She then yells in the direction of the house, I know what you did. So the Camerons are fully aware of who just spray painted on their property. But all the Pogues are dealing with this in different ways. Pope's having a hard time because his friend's dead and he lost a scholarship. And even though he's finally hooking up with the girl he's always had a crush on, it's not really helping matters. Keisha, on the other hand, is dealing with it just by smoking weed. And JJ's trying to deal with it as best he can, but he's working at a country club with a lot of kooks around him that are convinced that John B. killed the sheriff. And at one point, he's serving Topper, Kelsey, and another girl, and they're talking about how John B. killed the sheriff, and Topper's actually defending John B. But the rest of the table keeps going in on John B., and finally JJ gets sick of it, throws water in him, gets fired, and checks out. The Pogues, though, aren't the only ones that are having a tough time with it. So are the Camerons. Ward is worried he's going to get caught, and the fact that he has Pogue spray painting murderer on the side of his house does not help things. He meets with the sheriff and basically tells him, you got to arrest these kids, and then threatens the sheriff's interim tag. The sheriff, though, says, I'm doing what I can. Doesn't seem like he's real keen to help Ward out. The other person who's really stressed out in this situation is Rafe, because, he's the one who actually killed the sheriff. And when Ward walks back from talking to Shoop, Rafe says, do you think he's going to close the case? Do you think he's going to arrest those Pogues for what they did? And Ward yells at him, I don't know, Rafe. I don't know. And Rafe says, well, I have an idea. Here's what I think we should do. I think we should kill them. And then he walks off, tweaking hard. But two people who aren't that stressed are John B. and Sarah. They're on their way to Nassau without a care in the world, and they're actually talking about getting married. You gotta just love young love. Unbeknownst to them, though, they do have an issue. A fax came into the ship with a wanted poster for John B., saying that if anyone had any information, they would cash in $50K. And when the one deckhand brings the captain, whose name's Terrence, the wanted poster, captain's like, great, it's $50K in our pocket. We'll turn them in when we get to Nassau. And when they get closer to Nassau, Captain Terrence tells Sarah and John B. to head above deck, locking them into a room, but doing so under the guise that they won't be caught by customs. In reality, he's just trapping them in and hoping to cash in on that $50K. The one deckhand, though, kind of feels guilty. And he tells Terrence as much, but Terrence says, well, $50,000 is going to make you feel better. As the ship gets closer and closer to Nassau, Sarah points out their family house on the beach, which is huge, as you can imagine. And John B. is already devising a plan to get the gold back. But Sarah reminds him, we're fugitives in a foreign country. We got to be careful. The ship then arrives shortly after, but John B. and Sarah get wind of the fact that Terrence is bringing on the cops to arrest them. So John B. busts a window, and Sarah and him hop out and take off. And Terrence and his two deckhands try to catch up, but John B. and Sarah do end up getting away. They end up actually hiding out in this 5-star resort that Sarah and her family used to go to before they built the house. Sarah tells John B., just play it off like we belong here. Problem is, they don't look like it because they look dirty as hell. But you fake it till you make it. And when they get stopped by one of the workers at the hotel wondering what the hell they're doing there, Sarah grabs a drink and tells the guy, we don't need any help. When the guy's kind of surprised to hear that they have a reservation, she throws a bunch of hotel jargon at him that makes a lot of sense to him, no sense to me, but it ends up working because the couple gets away. As they make their way up to the roof of the hotel, though, John B. ends up stealing a maid's cell phone. Up until this point, they have nothing. When they get to the top of the hotel, she once again points out the house. And John B. points out, I bet that's where the gold is. And Sarah turns to him and says, promise me you won't do anything stupid. Because I know you want to go over there, but there's a gate, there's security, there's patrols. It's not good for you. And John B. cuts her off and says, I get it, but think about this. If I can get some money, I can get a lawyer, I can clear my name, we can go home. And the reality is the gold is only going to be there for a few days and then it's gone forever. The world thinks we're dead, so we just go, hop over the gate, steal some gold. But Sarah says no, it's way too dangerous. So promise me you're not going to go over there. And John B. reluctantly says, I promise. They then go over and chill on some beach chairs that they snuck up to the top of the roof, and that's when John B. pulls out the cell phone, because he wants to tell 3 particular people that he isn't dead, and those are the Pogues. He sends them a message from Nassau, and as they're sitting in class, they all get it, and they are shocked to open up their phones and see a picture of John B. and Sarah. At first, they think, no, this can't be. But they run out of class and text the number back, and sure enough, he basically proves that it's him by saying things that only he would know. And the Pogues celebrate the fact that their best friend isn't dead. He's alive. The Pogues, though, don't want to let John B. and Sarah just sit in the Bahamas. Kira says, they're going to get nabbed sooner or later, so we got to clear his name. And JJ has a terrible idea. It's kidnapping Rafe and making him admit what he did at gunpoint. Pope, on the other hand, has a slightly better idea, and it's to spy on the pilot that Ward Cameron used. So the group agree to head on over to the pilot's place the next day. But down in the Bahamas that night, John B's having trouble sleeping. He has this dream where Ward Cameron is literally choking him, screaming about taking his gold. And he wakes up in kind of a panic. He turns to his left and Sarah's sleeping. And John B just can't help himself. So he walks out of the resort and walks over to the Cameron's vacation house. He's able to get in, and he even finds a safe, but he's unable to get into it. And while John is trying to crack the code, Sarah ends up waking up. And when she sees that John is missing, she gets pissed off, but she has a pretty good idea of where he is. So she also leaves the resort. The problem is, Captain Terrence didn't just give up on finding his $50,000 lottery ticket. He put the word out to basically everybody on the island to keep a lookout for these kids. And one of the workers at the resort ends up seeing both of them leave, and he calls Terrence up. So as Sarah is making her way over to the vacation house, she ends up getting kidnapped by Terrence and his guys. When John B. arrives back at the resort the next day, Terrence's third deckhand, a woman named Cleo, tells John B. as he's walking back in the resort, Sarah's gone. She was taken by the captain. He's been looking all over the island for you, too. She ends up forcing John B. into her car at knife point. They then arrive at the house where Terrence is holding Sarah, and everybody from the boat is there. But while they're thrilled to see John B., Sarah is not. She's pissed off at him for lying to her. Sarah, though, begs Terrence to let them go because John B. didn't do anything. But Terrence says, well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but I've got 50,000 reasons not to let him go. And John B. says, what if I have more? And he pulls out the gold nugget. Sarah tells Terrence that that nugget is worth $143,000. And Terrence looks at it and tests it and sees that it's real, but then he says, I want my bounty too, though. And as Terrence's one deckhand grabs John B., he screams, that's just one, there's more. There's hundreds of millions of dollars worth of gold in her family's vacation house, and she has all the access codes. And that house is completely empty. Sarah confirms the gold is there and she can get them to it. And that offer is too good for Terrence to pass up. The problem is, it's daylight out, and the group wants to wait till nightfall to get in the house. So they sit it out and wait for the sun to set. Back on the cut, though, the Pogues put their plan in motion. Pope ends up breaking into the pilot's car and leaving his phone in it, which is connected to his AirPods. They then wait outside and have Key call the pilot and tell the pilot, I know what you did. I know who really killed the sheriff. It puts the fear of God in the pilot, who immediately gets in the car and goes for a drive where he calls up Ward Cameron saying, I need more money. And this is just what the Pogues wanted. They wanted this information. They wanted the dirt that they're hearing. The pilot tells Ward Cameron, I saved the gun. I know you told me to get rid of it, but I also know how you work. So I'm going to need more money because somebody knows something. Somebody knows what we did. And as they start negotiating, the captain pulls his car over. And it's not like Key can just pull on right behind it. That's going to look shady. So they have to keep driving. But the farther they get, the more out of range the AirPods are. And suddenly, Pope can't hear the conversation. They go to make a U-turn, but they get trapped by road work. And Pope gets out of the car and runs to get closer to the car. And he gets there just in enough time to hear where the meeting place is going down. The Pogues then head on over to the meeting location, and Ward starts getting ready to pay this guy off. As he's packing up a duffel bag full of cash, Rose says, what if he doesn't give you the gun? And Ward says, no gun, no money. I'm going to finish this tonight, and then in 2 days, I meet the Swiss in Nassau. As soon as they get the gold, we're set. Rose points out, though, that if things were to go sideways, they could always tell the truth about Rafe, but to Ward, that's not even an option. And then suddenly Ward gets a notification on his phone because the security system in Nassau has been triggered. And that's because Sarah, John B., and Terrence's group have gotten into the house. But when the security camera gets triggered, Ward ends up calling the police and letting them know that somebody is in his house, and it's not him. At this point, though, Sarah's in the Bahamas, and she's trying to figure out what the code could be to get into the safe. It takes her a little bit, but she finally figures out that the passcode is her birthday. When she opens it up, there is all of the gold. And Terrence is thrilled. He starts packing it up, but that's when they see the police sirens in the background, and they know they're in deep trouble. They go to get out of there, but Terrence ends up locking Sarah and John B. inside, figuring that they could slow up the police enough for Terrence and his people to get away. And as the police barge in the house, Sarah and John B. are hiding, trying to figure out what to do. And Sarah says, well, we do have a boat in the back. I just need to go get it. So John B. takes off, trying to cause a distraction for the police and give Sarah enough time to grab the keys and set up the boat for them to get out of there. And John B. does do a great job of distracting the police. Sarah gets to the beach with ease, finds the keys, But she also finds Terrence waiting for her there, and Terrence ends up stealing the keys. Him, Cleo, the deckhand, they get on the Cameron's boat, and they take off. And by the time Sarah gets back up to the house, she arrives in just enough time to see John B. being arrested and taken off. The security in Nassau calls Ward Cameron, who is sitting in his car waiting to meet the pilot. And the security lets him know that they apprehended a suspect in the break-in. They start describing the person, and Ward feels like he knows that description. So he tells the security officer, "Let me see the person." Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.